So, you want shredded abs. You've been cutting calories, you've been doing a bit of ab work in the gym, and maybe even you're starting to see a little bit of progress, but they're still not quite there. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through what to do, when to do it, and what to expect along the way to get shredded abs. Why should you listen to me? Because I've been shredding myself many times before, and I've helped coach dozens of clients through the exact same process. And if I was starting again tomorrow with a good amount of body fat to lose, these would be the exact steps that I would take to get myself shredded. One of the first things we need to address when it comes to getting shredded, and one of the things that a lot of people don't actually talk about a lot, is the mindset behind getting shredded. Because if you've never been shredded before, if you've never seen your abs, then it's going to be really hard to envision yourself as that person. It's going to be really hard to believe in the process and believe that it can actually work for you. And the thing is, you cannot defy the laws of thermodynamics. So you're not going to be an anomaly to that. If you are consuming less calories than you're burning, then you're going to be in a deficit and you're going to lose body fat. And if you lose enough body fat, you're going to see your abs. But it's still hard to believe if you've never seen yourself in that position before. And to get to that point, I always say to clients, you've kind of got to fake it till you make it. You've kind of got to just tell yourself, no, I will get there, even if you don't really believe it. The more you tell yourself that story, the more it becomes a reality. Then you start to get a little bit of results, you start to see things changing, and slowly but surely you actually start to believe in the process. And when you believe in it, it's only a matter of time until you actually get there. Now, believing in yourself is one thing, but the next thing is actually being willing to do the work that's actually required to get there. And a lot of people say, yeah, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get shredded abs, as long as I don't have to give up my Chinese at the weekend, or as long as I don't have to do cardio. And if you find yourself saying something like that, in the reality, that isn't doing whatever it takes. That's doing a little bit, but not completely giving up these things. And again, to get shredded abs, to get really shredded, you are going to have to make sacrifices. And the more sacrifices you make, the quicker your results will be. And the less sacrifices you make, the longer it's going to take and the worse your results will be. You'll not get to the same low levels of body fat as someone who's making more sacrifices. But if you're willing to do what it takes for a long enough period of time, then there's absolutely no reason that you cannot have shredded abs, okay? You just need to believe in yourself and you need to make the sacrifices. And if you do that, you'll get there. But the big question is, how long is it going to take you to get there? Now, this is something I can help you guys out with for free. Now, if you head over to the link in my description, you can download my free How to Get Abs and Keep Them ebook. And within this ebook is a free abs timeline calculator, okay? And what you can do in the timeline is you can put in all your details, you can put in your starting body fat percentage, and you can put in where you want to get to, and it'll give you a rough timeline in terms of how long it'll actually take you to get there. So if we put some data into the timeline now, we can actually see that for someone who is 100 kilos with 30% body fat and they want to get down to 10% body fat, we can see that realistically it's going to take them anywhere between 6 to 10 months. Now, when I talked about sacrifices earlier, the person who's making more sacrifices and working harder might get there in 6 months. The person who's making less sacrifices, they might take 10 months to get there. And again, ultimately, if you want to get silly shredded, if you want to get to 10% body fat, you're going to have to make quite a lot of sacrifices at some point anyway. So anywhere between 6 to 10 months, and you're going to have to lose 22 kilos of fat roughly to get there. So your goal weight would be 78 kilos. Now that gives you something really solid to work towards, because then you know how long it's going to take and how much you've got to lose. So we can start to establish a timeline, and that is going to be one of the most important steps of this process. Because if there's no timeline in place, if there's no goal for when we want to get there for, then it can turn into this continuous pit of dieting, but not dieting hard enough, and just kind of letting yourself off at the weekends because it's okay, I'll just start again next week. When you've got a goal and a timeline, you can't do that. You've got deadlines to meet, and it makes people work a lot harder and generally gets them there faster. Okay, so now that we've got a timeline in place, we know how much weight we've got to lose and we know how long it's roughly going to take, we can start to look at your nutrition. That's going to be the next most important step. And when it comes to nutrition, there's two scenarios here. We've got someone who's kind of currently following a structure, and we've got someone who's brand new to nutrition and has no idea where to start. So we're going to start by looking at the person who's brand new to nutrition and doesn't know where to start. And what I would advise when it comes to this is taking a 7-day food diary. So keeping a note of every single thing that you eat. And I would use something like MyFitnessPal to track this and try and roughly figure out what calories you're eating at the moment. Then once you've done the full 7 days, you'll be able to take all the calories, add every single day up, and divide it by 7, and that'll give you your average calories for the week. What you can do from here is take between 10 to 15% off of those calories. So let's just say you're eating 2,500 to begin with. We'll take 10% off, that's 250 calories. That would leave you at 2250 calories, and that would be your daily target from here on in. The next thing we need to look at is your protein target within that, and usually I'll say 2.2 grams of protein per every kilogram of body weight. So again, if we're talking about someone who's 100 kilos, just to make the maths easy, that'd be 220 grams of protein within those calories. Now, I know I've already plugged my free ebook, but another really cool part of that calculator that I showed you earlier is also the start and numbers calculation. So it will give you your starting macros and your starting calories based on some information about you. So literally you just put in whether you're male or female, put in your age, your height, your weight, your activity levels, and then what pace of fat loss you want, and it'll throw out the numbers. So for this person who's 100 kilos, 178 centimeters in height, and wants a steady rate of loss, doing light activity throughout the week, it's 2,270 calories it's putting out. 200 grams of protein, 80 grams of fat, and 188 grams of carbs. So that gives you something to start with. And then what you're gonna want to do with that is you're gonna want to track the data. You're gonna want to see what your body weight's doing. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? You're going to want to look at your progress photos, so taking progress photos once per week. You might even want to do waist measurements and see what your waist's doing, if it's coming in or not. And those things will give you the data that you need to tell you whether or not you're heading in the right direction. If everything's heading the right way, your weight's going down, your waist is getting smaller, and you're starting to look leaner in the pictures, then everything's going well. If it's all staying the same, then you might need to cut those calories a little bit harder, or you could up your activity levels. And if you're gaining weight, and you're starting to look a bit fatter in the photos, and if your waist is going up, well, it's a sign that you're on too many calories and you're going to have to pull it back by quite a bit. Either way, when you track the data and you keep an eye on things, it lets you know which direction you need to head in from there. But something I will say is if you're making any changes to your diet, give it at least 7 to 10 days to actually kick in before you make a decision on that. Don't just diet for 2 or 3 days and say, oh, it's not working, I give up. Now, throughout the process, obviously fat loss is going to slow down, your body is going to adapt. What actually happens over time is that as you feed yourself less calories, your body finds ways to be lazier. You maybe stop training as hard, you maybe sit down more than the stand, you maybe stop doing as many steps, and your body will try and find a way to even things out. So what you need to do is keep making adjustments to your diet so that you can keep ahead of the game. Now, you know, you might want to stay proactive and you might want to make these changes before fat loss starts to stall. You might want to make them, you know, every week or every second week, or you might want to take it a bit slower and just wait for progress to stall and then make those changes. It just depends on how quick you want to lose the body fat and how much time you've got until your goal. But when it comes to making changes, again, depending on how many calories you're on, I would lose somewhere between 50 to 250 calories most times when making adjustments. Again, if you're on more calories and you can afford to take the hit of 250 calories, then great. If you're on less calories and 50 calories is a bigger chunk of your calorie intake, then that's all you've got to work with, okay? You've got to be sensible depending on how many calories you're on. If I've got, you know, a 50 kilo woman who's only on 1,500 calories, you know, dropping her by 50 calories might make a big difference. But if I've got a 100 kilo man who's on 2,500 calories, that 50 calories probably won't make much of a difference. So it's getting an adjustment right depending on the scenario or who we're talking about and what the situation is. The other options you've got is adding activity. You could add, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 steps per day, or you could add, you know, 30 minutes of cardio for that week. And either of those adjustments, again, does the same sort of thing. So we don't just need to look at the calories inside of the equation, we can also look at the calories outside of the equation too, to start to ramp things up a little bit. And a lot of the time that kind of comes down to how much time you've got available, because if you're someone who's got a lot of time and you're willing to do the extra steps and you're willing to do the extra cardio, then that's maybe the best move for you. Just keep your food a little bit higher. But if you're someone who's busy, doesn't get the chance to get out and get steps as much, and you're maybe struggling to hit your steps and cardio as it is, then doing it, taking it from the food is going to be a more sensible option. To give an example of how this might look over time during the dieting phase, on week 1, you might start off around about 2,500 calories, 190 grams of protein, 10,000 steps, and 4 training sessions per week. And by week 19, you might have brought those calories all the way down to 1,800 from there. Proteins actually went up, but only in the last kind of adjustments, because protein generally stays the same throughout the whole process. But in this situation, in this example, what I've done is I've actually upped the protein when I've been on less calories, because that actually increases satiety. So less calories, more protein, but more levels of fullness, if that makes sense. Steps have gradually increased throughout the process, as has cardio. Resistance training has stayed exactly the same, okay? And that's a real life example of one of the times that I dieted down and got shredded. and that's exactly what I'd done over a 20-week period. Obviously, the adjustments are going to look different for everyone, but that's just an example of how it might look and the progressive nature of things as you go through a dieting phase. Now again, depending on how much body fat you've got to lose, you might want to use things like diet breaks to break it up a little bit. For me, a 20-week dieting phase, it wasn't a problem. I could diet all the way through and I found it relatively easy. But for other people, that might be a long time to diet. If you've never dieted down before to try and get shredded, then 20 weeks is going to be a long period of time. So you might want to break that down and maybe do something like 8 weeks, take a week's diet break, which basically diet breaks would be just having a week of higher calories, round about maintenance calories, just to give you a little bit of a break from dieting, drop a little bit of fatigue and go again. So you might want to take 8 weeks, do a diet break, do another 8 weeks, do a diet break, and then finish off, what would that be, like another 4 weeks after that. It'll take a bit longer doing it that way, but again, if it means that you're going to stick to it for long enough to get shredded, then it's beneficial if you ask me. I'd rather take a little bit longer and actually get there rather than trying to do it all in one go and giving up because you got sick fed up of it. Something to note is getting shredded, it's not always the nicest feeling. When you're actually shredded to the bone, when you're really, really lean, you get to a point where your natural testosterone is just through the floor. It feels like you're walking through sand every day. You feel low in energy. It feels like an effort to go to the gym. Even if you love training at the start, it feels like an effort to go to the gym. And sometimes like you get this whole thing where you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you think you look like shit, but actually you look amazing. And it's not until you gain a little bit of body fat back and you look back on the pictures, you're like, fuck, I was shredded back then. But because your head's so like minced from dieting, it just feels like you look terrible, or you catch yourself in some bad lighting or something and you just get too emotionally involved in it. So there are downsides to being shredded. Like, it's not really a good place to be long term either. In terms of like a long term level of body fat you'd want to be at, probably around about 15 to 20% is probably a safer, healthier place to be. But actually being shredded, again, it's usually for a short term. It's usually for like a photo shoot or for like a holiday or stepping on stage or something like that. It's not something that you'd be looking to do in the long term. And again, right now, I probably say I sit around 15% body fat, and I think that's an okay place to be. And to get to that stage, you need to go through a proper reverse diet, which we're not going to get into in this video. I'll actually put a link up here so you can head over to one of my videos on that, but it's a deep subject in and of itself. So yeah, so hopefully that makes sense to you all. Hopefully you understand the exact process to go through when you're trying to get shredded. I've given you all the details you need. If you head over to the link in the description, obviously the How to Get Abs and Keep Them ebook is there, and that has both of the calculators, the abs timeline and the starting numbers calculator too. So it gives you everything you need, a timeline established, numbers to start with, you know how to progress things moving forward. So follow this exact step-by-step process and you will get shredded abs.